Hello, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our seventh session for global issues. And I'm very glad to welcome you with this very nice piece of a disc from Aloe Black from, which is called Future, which is soundtrack for a very interesting documentary from events that happened last year, which I widely recommend if you're interested in what is happening in the United States. And of course, well, I'm sure what we are going to be reviewing today in class, we'll put a number of questions, we'll put a number of things from what you are seeing in the news. So I hope we can have questions about that, we can have discussion about that, we can go on having this wondering about what happens in the world and better understanding of what's happening in the world. So here's our agenda for today. We're actually looking at this today. Since yesterday, we actually gave time for everybody to send in their assignments. And I'm very happy to say that it was very nice to see everybody, but two people sent their assignments on time. So I will be reviewing them and getting them back to you. I have already done some last night, and I will be doing some more during the week, so that you begin having your marks, you begin having your comments on some of your activities. You should know that the way I grade I grade the ones that sent it the earliest. So if you are one of the people that sent their activity to the very moment until the latest, so you will be one of the last ones to receive a grade for that activity, because the order I follow is that I begin with those that send it first, and I immediately send it back so that you can have it. Okay, so this is our program for today. So we are going into we're having a lecture for the first time. So having a lecture, it's just different the meaning from what we would have in Spanish. It's a similar word, but it has a different meaning in English and Spanish. Lecture means that we are going to review a topic guided by the teacher, and we will be opening up the discussion for some of the elements, some of the different things that are there. So I will thank you a lot for being present, for being attentive to what we are discussing. I will be, of course, sending some presenting or inviting, yes, some questions or comments from you. Therefore, it is important that you are on track of what we are doing. And remember that I always ask those that have their cameras on or are not there, yes, or are apparently not there, to comment or to answer, yes, some of the things, because we are so that we can have that. Okay. Give me 1 second. Is my PowerPoint closed so that we can. Again. Okay, I see some of you are having some quick issues. Okay. So today we will begin exploring some of the main elements to understand international relations, to understand what happens, yes, in international analysis. So in order to study what is happening, in order to understand what is happening, we need vocabulary, we need tools, we need a number of things that tell us, yes, or that allow us to understand it. But also, we need to very well understand the reason why we are trying to understand it, why we are trying to approach it, why we are trying to have it. So our first question of the day would be, why would we want to study international events? Okay. And I'm asking Luis Miguel to participate. So Luis Miguel, why do you think we should study current international events? Luis Miguel, are you there?
Yeah, teacher, sorry.
Okay, can you answer the question, please?
I don't know.
No idea? Not at all?
Like, in my opinion?
In your opinion, yes, I'm asking for your opinion.
Because we have to have like a cultural, we have to know part of the world and be, how do you say culto?
We should be knowledgeable on the world.
Like knowledgeable of what's happening. Because if we don't know, we won't know what's gonna happen with our country.
Okay, if we don't know, so in there you're justifying we have to, right? So we could know about the world. We could choose to know about the world. It could be a choice, but you began and you said we have to, right? We have to be knowledgeable on what is going on. And then you mentioned the reason. You say, because otherwise we may not know what may be happening there in that future. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much, Luis Miguel. That's good. Franco, do you have any other reason different from what Luis Miguel proposed?
No, I don't
No?
think so.
So would you agree with him? And that's it? That's the only reason we should, or we would be interested in studying international events?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Franco. Anybody got any other reason that they would like to propose on why we would like to study, or why it would be interesting to study current international events? Because in there, we're just having, so far, we only have one reason, right? Because, well, we should know, yes, we should be knowledgeable on them. And not just to know, yes, but because it has a certain utility. Yes, it has some kind of use, yes. So let me go at a series of proposals, yes, from the perhaps most important one, which I would agree with Luis Miguel and Franco, to a wider or a more important or a less important reason. Well, the first reason I would propose to you is that the different regions in the world are complex. Yes, are complex. So if we want to address a growing exchange in the world, a growing difference, a more complex way of understanding cultures, all of this, well, we have to understand it. We have to approach it. And there's no other way to do it than actually studying it, that actually trying to live it, yes, and trying to see how it works, yes. So that's the first reason I would give, that the different regions of the world are complex. Even though we are human societies, even though we are human people, the fact is we are complex as societies, and trying to understand one another helps us dialogue better, helps us communicate better, helps us find solution better. So that's an important thing that we should be aware of, that different regions of the world are complex, and that should give us an incentive to try to see what is it that we can see from. Okay. A second reason is when we look outside, we can much better understand and analyze the region we live in. For example, Please raise your hand. Raise your hand right now. All those that have had the opportunity to travel outside the country at any point in your life, any point in your life. Okay? Please raise your virtual hand. All those that have been able to leave the country for some vacation or some period of time or something. Very good. So we have half of the classroom, more than half of the classroom, 2/3 of this classroom that have been able to leave Mexico at least for some week or some days or some months or whatever. Okay. So I would like you to share a little bit about it. So please, Luna, can you share us where did you go?
Yeah. Like 2 years ago, we went with the tech to travel to Europe, part of the travels that the secundaria offers,
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so in there we have the first thing. So the first thing is that when you went there, you learned a little bit about the local culture, the local customs, the things that they did, how they were different, right? So please tell me, Luna, remember, shoot yourself out to 2 years ago. So you were many days outside of the country. When you came back, what are some of the things that you began to notice as you came back?
It was like a complete different perspective because
Mhm.
when I came back, I could see the difference, for example, on how people act here and there.
Yes.
It's
So what
just
was one
such a
behavior,
different
for
culture.
example, that you noticed regarding people? Is one behavior you noticed that was different?
For example, that here in Mexico, we are like constantly doing many things, I don't know, moving around.
Yes.
And in some countries in Europe, people just seem to be kind of boring, maybe.
Okay. Yes. Very good. So that taught you something that perhaps you hadn't noticed about how the Mexican community lives altogether, right? So perhaps we live all these press, yes, on some points, doing different things all the time and these kind of things. And other societies live a slower kind of pace, right? So perhaps when we are only in our society, only in our city, only in our neighborhood, we don't notice what are these different things. When we come back, we begin noticing all of these different things and notice that things can be different. Marie, what's one thing that you noticed when you came back?
Well, in these occasions, I went to Texas 2 times,
Uh-huh.
and I noticed like the streets. The most impacting in the thing that most impacted me was the streets, because
Mhm.
there are like big avenues, and like the buildings are very tall, and there are a lot of malls, and like they have a great variety. And when I came back, I was like kind of sad because I comparing Irapuato to Texas, like it is
Mhm.
a town, a little town, and I like and and even though we have like here in Irapuato we have more things like than in, I don't know, Salamanca, Celaya, or other cities in Guanajuato, I
Mhm.
still think that is a very little city
Okay.
compared to Texas or any city of Texas.
Okay.
And I
Good.
think that that was the thing that like impressed me the most.
That impressed you the most, right? When you come back, you suddenly notice perhaps something that you hadn't noticed before, right? Or at least in that scale, right? Because perhaps we can go to other cities here in our country that are larger, of course, than Irapuato. But even then, there's some other smaller differences that make it, yes, that really strike us when we come back. Julia, can you share us a little bit of your experience coming back? What did you begin to notice?
Well, maybe one of the things was the manners, because I
Mhm.
think that when you come to Mexico, we are very like home welcoming,
Okay,
and
good.
our hospitality is very good. And in some other countries, I think people are more rude.
Thank you very much. Where did you go to? France?
Yeah.
Yeah, French are rude. Especially if you visited Paris, yes, they tend to be very, very rude. Even though I have met just a few Parisians, even though um, living in Paris for some time. Yes. Yeah, I would agree with you totally on that one. Jorge.
Me?
Yes.
Well, the last time I leave the country was like a month ago. It was in Texas, and the first thing I noticed is that nobody used like the face mask.
Okay.
Like everyone, like especially in Texas, like nobody cares about like the COVID and all that stuff. And it was like weird, like coming back here and see like everybody again with the face mask.
Yes. Yeah, and that's very particular about Texas. If they are if the United States is a loner country, Texas, these lone state, it's really the Lone Star state. It's really really impressive. Yes, and how they really cherish their difference. Of, I want to do things this way, and they're going to do it that way. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Thanks you. Okay. Anybody else that wants to share one big difference they noticed when they came back?
Yeah, me.
Yes, Jose Ramon?
In other countries, they respect the traffic rules. And here we don't.
Okay. Okay. Yes, that was something that is something that is very, very remarkable. So for instance, let me share regarding your comment. So I have lived for certain months or even many months in other countries. For instance, I lived 11 months in France. And I grew accustomed to crossing the street, yes, without even having to look because cars will stop, right? And I almost got killed here in Mexico when I got back and I really just did it, yes. I almost got in a car accident because of that, yes. You lose that track of not having to be scared of cars because you know drivers will be stopping, will be paying attention whenever you cross at the design place where you can cross the street, right? You put one foot on the street, cars stop. Yeah, so there's respect for the pedestrian. It depends on the country, but overall we have these striking difference about things. So right now we're not going to discuss why these differences happen, but this is the important part. So when we are able to look at the world, when we look back at ourselves, we're able to better do this. Yes? We can understand a lot more our country. The things that we can consider that are bad, but also the things that we consider that are great that no other country or no other society has. Yes? So that's very important. We are looking at current international events that allow us to look back at our societies, at our city, at our neighborhood, and realizing, well, I would want that, or saying, I don't want that, yes? When we are able to do that, it's a really important exercise for comparison. For example, if you're familiar with what is going around in Afghanistan right now, that it actually very, very quickly descended into the control of these group of people, fundamentalist group of people, you really notice, yes, that, hey, I really wouldn't like that to happen in my community, in my country. What do I have to do, right? So that always allows us to really compare and have this analysis of our own society. So that's a second level. Yes, one is looking out and saying, yes, just by culture, I'm going to know about the world. But another one is saying, well, that has a utility. And actually that allows to understand myself better as a person, as a family, as a neighborhood, as a city, yes, as a state, as a country, okay? So it's really, really useful on those grounds, yes? So that's why they say that travels illustrate, because whenever you go and then come back, there is a new vision that you begin having, and that's really important, okay? So the same happens when we study these international events. We are able to see ourselves reflected, our own society is reflected there, and therefore being able to have it. Thanks, everyone. You can lower your hands now. So let's hope we have as many interested people in participating in the other questions. So to be up to date, this could be really kind of shallow, kind of just a simple reason. Yes, well, I want to be up to date. I want to be able to participate in conversation. Again, we're going from the most important reasons to the least important reasons. And finally, yeah, well, one thing that you should study them, and this is a should, yes, is because they affect you. Yes, events in the world, smaller or larger, have a direct affectation in our lives. Okay, and let me very quickly make an example of that. Okay, very quickly, anybody that is in your room or right there in the desk you are in. Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes. Very quickly, with the things you have around or in your closet, look for the tags of the different things that you have around. If you have a notebook, or if you have a pen, or if you have your T-shirt, look at the label, at the information for your T-shirt, or your clothes, or your tennis shoes. Where were they made? Okay, very quickly, and please begin putting it here. I'll put a whiteboard, and please write the different countries that you find. Very quick. You have 2 minutes to check whatever you have. Go to your shoes. Go to your closet. Check your desk. Yes, and please begin writing which countries are you able to find. Which countries are the things you have right there in your room, or the place you are in, or the clothes you are wearing. Where were they made? Where do they come from? Okay, as soon as you see these different countries, please write them on the whiteboard. So let me begin. So right now here, I have an English book, this one. And it says right here, it was printed in Ireland. Yes. So what do we expect? It's an English book. It should come from the United Kingdom or the United States. No, it was actually printed in Thailand all the way. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much. So you have crops made in Mexico. Come on, I have 30 people checking out their desk, their clothes. Very good. So your T-shirt was made in Turkey. It was manufactured in Turkey. You have your backpack that was made in China. You have your mud liner, very good, that was made in Japan. You have your iPad that was, I'm sure, perhaps manufactured in the USA, but with components from many other parts, right? The more complex the item, the more places it may be coming from. So you have a book from Mexico. You have some paintings from China, yes. You have some pants from China. You have a thermo from China. You have pen from China. You have a sweater from China, okay? So you have a T-shirt from Cambodia. Thank you very much. Okay, so China, China, China. Okay, anybody else? I'm sure you can actually find many, many others that you are going to be able to see. Search for the labels, search for the different places they were produced. Yes, the place where they were made. So you have some print around in Mexico. So you have a coffee mug made in Thailand, sandals that come from China, some glue that comes from Germany. Your cap comes from the Philippines. Yes. So, okay, continue putting them. You have a T-shirt that actually says it was made in Portugal. So let me tell you something funny. Once, the first time I left the country, I bought in New York City a T-shirt and made in Mexico. So it's just like going so far, going 5 hours away in plane to find out that what you just bought was actually made some hours away from where you live. You have coffee from Colombia, very good. Okay, so here's the idea. If you were to continue to do this in all of your room or in all of your house, you would find an average of 50 different countries present in your environment, okay? So that actually means that there are people, yes, in 50 different countries that were able to produce, generate, create, and then transport, yes, all these different things that you take and that you most likely bought here, because the majority of the things you have around you, you didn't go to those countries to get them. It is possible that some of them, you actually got them there, but the large majority of them, you actually got them, yes, in a closed country or right in this country. So the idea is that all of these different things, all of these different realities all come together to being something that is in our daily lives. Even though it has become very much invisible, how much they are there, how much it is present, the fact is that they somehow, and this is just an idea, affect our life, okay? So let me give you here another very quick example. Some years ago, and this is useful, and this was useful, very useful in my case, because it depends on how you know certain things. Some years ago, there was a very bad weather. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, very bad weather in Turkey. Yes, very cold weather in Turkey. So there is in my house, in your house, in my home, in your house, there is one product that is very essential. Two products, two goods that are very much essential for everyday living. I have 2 daughters and my wife. There is one is lemons. My wife cannot live without lemons for food. And the second one is Nutella. Yes. In my house, there is no day that you cannot live without there being Nutella. Okay. So when I saw the news that there was very cold weather in Turkey, I went that afternoon to the mall and I got a lot of Nutella. Okay. So can anybody try to explain what link may there be?
Because Nutella is made in Turkey. Or
Okay.
some ingredient is from Turkey.
Okay, Nutella is not actually made in Turkey, but it does have a core ingredient. What is Nutella made of? Anybody who can tell me?
Avellanas.
In English? So yes, avellanas, but it is?
Let me look for it. I don't know how to say it in English.
Okay.
Hazelnuts.
Hazelnuts, thank you very much, Marie. So indeed, Sebastian and Marie got it right. So it's hazelnuts, yes? Now, it turns out that hazelnuts, they are not produced everywhere in the world. Actually, 70% of the hazelnuts in the world is produced in Turkey, yes? So if you got very bad weather in a country that produces most of the hazelnuts in the world, what is going to happen to the production? There is going to be less hazelnuts, right? So what is going to happen? Everybody that requires hazelnuts is going to need that, and therefore the price is going to rise. And actually, the price went up fourfold. So it was 4 times more expensive to buy hazelnuts than before, than the month before. And there's also a company that acquires 80% of the world production of hazelnuts, which is Ferrero, the ones that make these products. They also make other products, but basically it's that. So you have this problem, right? So it's weather at the other side of the world. It's bad weather, cold weather at the other side of the world that destroys the production of something, and somehow you are affected. So what happened during that period? Perhaps you were too young to notice. I think you were in elementary school. But basically, the price of Nutella went up 3 times. Yes. So if you got a jar of Nutella for 50 pesos, it began to be more scarce. Suddenly, there was no Nutella, but it was also very expensive to acquire. You could get it for 150 pesos. Therefore, this creates these changes all around, yes, the different spaces and the different things that we live in everyday products that we don't even realize how connected they are. Okay. So imagine now, forget my case. My case is my home, and it requires that. Let's say you have a store, or you do international business, or you have these kind of different products and you depend on them. How is that going to create havoc or create destruction on what you have if you are not able to be on track with these different things that are happening in the world? Okay, so that's the final idea. Why would I would propose that we should study current international events? They have a direct affectation in what goes on. Yes. And perhaps I really didn't want to use the example, but you see it right now with coronavirus. There is a direct affectation on things. Decisions taken by other countries give us examples, and they have all of these. It allows us to see other societies, also how they are complex. It also allows us to know if we are taking the right or the wrong decisions, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to know if Mexico is doing right or wrong, only when we are able to compare it with the rest of the world. If we want to know the current news around, and finally, it has a direct affectation on us. Okay, so these are some important reasons that we could take altogether. So just like many of the social sciences, yes, international events are very much like history. So anybody knows this very famous phrase on why we study history? Vale Salazar, why? What is this very common phrase that say why we study history?
To know better our countries or our past.
Okay, so yes, it is involved in that, to know better our past, but why do we want to know our past in this very famous phrase? Not to what?
So we don't make the same mistakes.
Very good. So I'm sure everybody has heard this phrase, right? So we study history not to repeat the same mistakes, right? Not to repeat the same mistakes. So we can make new mistakes, but we shouldn't be repeating the same mistakes again. So studying current international events is kind of, or it also has this justification. So when we look at what is happening in other parts of the world, we can learn from what is happening and actually have an application for that in our own societies, in our own cultures, in our own neighborhoods. So for example, for those that have lived, for example, let's say for those of you that have lived with a family in a different country, and you have learned about their family dynamics, you have learned about their neighborhood. There are things that we may understand that we learn with love. For example, I don't know, for example, let me tell you, I love how communities in the United States get together in their neighborhoods and they do a number of things. Yes. They tend to be a little bit more solidary. They tend to know each other. Yes. Whereas here in Mexico, most people, if I ask any of you, do you know how many of your neighbors do you know? And how much of their history do you know? It's actually going to be a very lonely show of hands, the people that know their neighbors. Yes. And building community, I think it's an important thing that we don't do as often here in Mexico, even though we tend to say we are friendly, we are open, we share. Yes, we do, but we have a different level of cooperation when it comes to actual cooperating with your own neighbor. We actually fear our neighbors many times. Yes. So when we look at what is happening in other places, it can also allow us to be different, do things different, or learn at least what we want, what we don't want. Okay. So here's some other ideas. For example, things that have a direct affectation on you. For example, when the Twin Towers were attacked and the Pentagon were attacked on September 11, 2001, a lot of things changed. You didn't get to live the world before that, but the world after that was very different. For example, when I was your age, I could go to an airport and just travel and 1 hour or half an hour before an international flight, and there would be no problem. I could get my things passed through security. I could go through security and just take my plane. And today, if you arrive less than 2 hours, you may not make it. Yeah, so things change. A lot of these things are very different. Here's another example. And even though this happened I think this happened around when you were born. But you may have seen a movie about it. Anybody knows this event? The one that is right there in the screen? Yes? Which one? Who can recall it?
The Haiti tsunami.
So there, yeah, well, there have been other kind of tsunamis, but yes, and some recent ones. So there was an earthquake in Haiti. There was also a tsunami recently in Japan, but this picture is particularly from a tsunami in Indonesia. From later, they made a movie about it. Right now, I cannot recall the name. I'm sure one of you will be able to recall it, and write it on the chat or something. But what was interesting about this tsunami? This tsunami devastated a large part of the country, and it was impressive how many countries in the world got together and helped, yes, the situation. Before that tsunami, so yes, countries helped. Yes, for example, in the earthquake in Mexico City in 1985, a lot of countries helped us, and Mexico received help from a lot of countries. And Mexico also helps a lot of different countries. But in this tsunami, this was the first time that the United Nations created a body that would coordinate international assistance. Because the problem is every country wanted to help, but since the country, right, that was in distress, that was having the problem, was destroyed, a lot of its capacities had a lot of troubles. Well, the problem is that perhaps help got there, they got their water, they got their much food, a lot of different things, but they were not able to coordinate how to get it to the people that needed it. So after this international event, the United Nations created, the member countries of the United Nations created an organism that would respond to disasters in any place in the world. And it is the first time humanity had something to coordinate that. It's not the first time humanity helped. Of course, there were many different things that countries did or that smaller organizations did, but it was the first time governments got together to find a permanent mechanism to help people in distress in any place in the world. And since then, the response of humanity to any kind of distress has been quicker. For example, right now with the earthquake in Haiti, right now, you have people, yes, from many different countries coordinating help and coordinating assistance right there, okay? This picture is from a recent financial crisis, not this year's financial crisis, from the 2008 financial crisis, which was a crisis brought in by some bad practices in the United States, but that began the year before with a food crisis. In 2007, ladies and gentlemen, there was a food crisis in the world. So what is the problem with the food? Well, the problem was that it was a very bad year, weather-like, yes, speaking about the weather, and that made a lot of crops to be destroyed, yes, a lot of food, agricultural production to be destroyed. So there was little food, and the problem is that that began increasing the price of food. Most particularly the most staple foods. So for example, rice or corn or wheat went up. The price of those went up. Most people didn't even notice it. Well, sorry, most people in our circles, yes. I am sure that perhaps during that year, most people didn't even notice, yes, in our families, that the price of certain things were going up, the price of certain kind of food. But for the majority of the world, that was a huge crisis, because let's imagine that a family can buy 2 kilos of tortillas in a day. But suddenly, because of these food crises, they were only able to buy one of them. So now they stopped receiving half the nutrients they could afford because of these kind of food crisis. Of course, if you go to the tortilleria and you just ask for another one, the price increases like it is doing right now. Well, you just pay it. But whenever that was impossible for families, and that is the majority of the people in the world, that actually created a huge, huge problem that later communicated itself to a global financial crisis, okay? And final idea here for something that that shows us how sometimes we don't understand international events as well as we should. Is the Canadian visa. Have you heard something about the Canadian visa in the news for 1, 2, 3 years ago? Has anybody heard anything regarding Mexico or regarding this kind of things? No? Not at all?
Sure.
Yes.
No. I haven't listened of it.
You haven't heard anything about that that Canadian visa. Okay. So let me tell you, let me give you some context about that Canadian visa and that problem, and you will let me know. Yes, let's actually make it interesting. Let's make it an extra credit activity for those that want to do it. So here's the idea. Okay, here's the context. For many years, for almost 2 decades, yes, Canada was open for anybody, any person that was from Mexico to visit the country, okay, to visit the country. So you just needed your passport. So for example, you know, if you go to the United States, you need a visa, right? What is a visa? A visa is a permit by the country that is receiving for you to visit that country. So there's this essential difference. A passport is a document that your own country gives you to identify you and to ask, when you open your passport, you will see right there, the government of Mexico asked the government of the receiving country to let this person enter and have all assistance necessary in your country, okay? So that's the passport. The passport is a document issued by your own government to identify you as a citizen of that country so that you can move around. Many countries will require just this passport, this ID, but there are some countries that require people from certain countries to get a visa. In the case of the United States, for example, they require a visa for Mexico, for Mexicans, for people that have Mexican passports. Canada had for 20 years, they didn't request a visa. If you wanted to go to Canada, you could just go to the airport, buy a plane ticket, have your Mexican passport, and go on, and you could go to Canada. But some years ago, the Canadian government said, no more. Mexicans will need to get a visa if they want to go to Canada, okay? So what do you think was the reaction in the newspapers here in Mexico?
Negative.
Negative. What do you think they were publishing? What do you think people were saying in the street when this news came out? Canada will now ask a visa for Mexicans.
Like they were racist.
That they were racist? Yes, people commented that. Yes, people commented that. That was even in newspapers. People put that in printed opinion in newspapers. People were saying that. Oh, come on, Canadians just got like gringos, right? Like they are now doing the same that the United States. Yes. So people were commenting that. Okay. And it was a very difficult case because people didn't pay attention to why was it that Canada was putting it. So yes, people commented, and if you ask people that lived through that, most people stood with the idea that Canadians in general are racist. Now, would you say Canadians in general, I'm not saying, I mean, there may be some people that are racist, right? But would you say in general, Canada or the Canadian society is a racist country?
No.
I see a lot of no's. So it's funny because people here interpret it like that. The government of Canada explained their decisions. And the first thing I saw when I saw what was the reason why they put it, I agreed with them. Yes, they are doing the right thing. And let me tell you, I am not racist. So I agreed with them. So for anybody that wants extra credit, I will tell you the reason tomorrow. And I think you will agree with me that Canada was right to put a visa to Mexico. But I want you to research it on your own. If you want extra credit, you can research about it and send me an email with explaining me the reason why Canada put that a visa, and telling me if you agree or not. Okay? I will tell you tomorrow why I did it, but if you want some extra credit, you can send me an email researching why. Okay? So it's optional, it's up to you, and you decide if you do it or not. Is there any question so far? Okay, so very quick summary. We are bound this semester, or we are having this class because it is very important we try to understand the complexity of the world, or that we see that that complexity affects us in some way, or also that the more we are able to go into that complexity and understand it and live it, we can live better lives as we can decide things that we want to do in our society, and also learn there are things that we can share with the world. There are a lot of things that we can make better in the world that we have right here in our country, in our neighborhood, in our societies, that we can give the world, okay? So these are the main reasons. These are the main ideas, yes, that I want you to stay with today. And tomorrow we will begin discussing that Canadian visa, okay? So we are going to end the class right here. Should you have any question, please stay for some minutes, and otherwise, class dismissed. Have a lovely morning.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you,
Bye.
sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for sharing. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.